we'd like as many of you as can to give $1,000 each to the Republicans. They get 500 of their executives to do this. They raise $500,000. Okay, all legal, all giving the $3,000. Non-profit corporations. Large donors can give non-profit groups advantage used to enhance their political profiles. And they give an example here of Lamar Alexander. We finance a satellite program. Bob Dole uses this thing. So in other words, here's what they have. Some kind of non-profit corporation set up. Money is solicited for this, and although this thing on the surface looks non-political, what in reality it's attempting to do is to promote the ideas of one political candidate. Another way of getting around the campaign limits. And then the independent expenditures, and this is one of the biggest loopholes, maybe the biggest. The law allows unlimited donations by a group of individuals as long as spending is not officially coordinated with the campaign. So in other words, if I set up a private little company and I say my company in the year 2000 is going to be used to make attack ads against the Republican presidential candidate, anybody can give me as much money as they want. I can spend $20 billion if I want, as long as I do not coordinate my activities with the presidential candidate, as long as they don't know what I'm doing. Look at the example they gave here in 1988. The infamous Willie Horton ads supported the Bush campaign were financed by an $8.5 billion independent expenditure by a group of Republican consultants. And this you may have seen on TV. Republicans ran this thing about how Willie Horton was a black man who was out on furlough from the Massachusetts penal system, although he was a convicted killer. The laws had been on the books up there for a number of years, and the governor who was running for president at the time in Massachusetts, Michael McCarthy, he was governor at the time, when Horton was left out, he attacked several people, raped a woman, all kinds of things. So they ran this ad, and essentially attempting to show that the Caucus is responsible for letting criminals out, who in turn are going to create other kinds of criminals. And then they had the racial aspect in terms of Willie Horton being black. They got a lot of criticism. But this group ran it. They do whatever they wanted. They had this. Any questions about this? Okay. Let's take a look then at a couple of these articles together, all of which have to deal with people being named ambassadors and the amount of money that they gave. One with a little chart just saying the 10 most. There's a 2-page article talking about diplomatic dealing, and then the longer page talking about Clinton envoy choices are faulted as political. Now, the main tenor, of course, of all these articles is people give money to get named to ambassadorships. What do these ambassadorships have in common?
They all have money.
Well, yeah, they all have money. Okay, but what about the appointments, the examples they give in these articles? Do you see anything kind of in common in terms of where these people become ambassadors? Well, they're all going to places that are popular tourist destinations, right? You're not seeing really anybody heading to the Congo, civil war going on, heading to Angola, okay, heading to Indonesia, which is in the midst of turmoil, heading to various other kinds of places, heading to the Georgia Republic, which is in the middle of turmoil. Where are they heading? Places where people like to go on vacation. England, France, Germany, Scandinavian countries, Italy, various kinds of places like this, from Australia, New Zealand, throw these countries in. Now, what do your qualifications have to be? Basically nothing. Well, how do you, if you basically don't know anything about being an ambassador, how can you be an ambassador to England or various other places? The staff runs the stuff. Your basic job is to kind of meet with various kinds of political people. And the most prominent one one, as you saw in the film, and I mentioned at the end of the film, was Pamela Harriman, who gave not only earlier to sponsor Clinton, but ended up giving $130,000 to the campaign, made ambassador to France. Now she was fluent in French, and most people think she did a good job before she died in the swimming pool over there swimming after an exercise session. But why did she get the job? No diplomatic training, anything like that? Because she was close to the president, she made a lot of money. And this is how it works. Now, where you don't put political people is where there's all kinds of trouble spots. Don't put them into Russia. We have problems with Russia. Don't put them into China. You don't put them into various other countries. Don't make them ambassador to Yugoslavia. Various kinds of things like that. But places. When was the last time anybody went to war with Switzerland? 600 years ago or something. This is where people want to be ambassadors who've given money. And remember the one guy in the film talking about, yeah, my friends, they want ambassadors and stuff. I don't want to do it. I just want to go to parties. A lot of people like going to parties. They like dressing up. They like being called ambassador. They like being called ambassador even after they're no longer an ambassador. A lot of people still call them, use that various kind of title. Now notice this is kind of interesting. One of the contributors on Clinton early on, who later became ambassador to the UN, okay, Madeleine Albright. What's Madeleine Albright doing now? You may know what Madeleine Albright's doing now? She's Secretary of State, right? First woman Secretary of State. Now, it certainly did not hurt her that she had early connections, both with money and contacts with the Democrats, and with Clinton. Now, generally, it appears people think she's very well qualified for the job, that she has, but money gives you contacts and access to it. Any questions on that? How these things work? Look on this. Did I give you this one, this long single sheet? Yeah. Okay. Look. Just on the second paragraph there. This was from 94 from the New York Times. They're talking about Clinton. Some of his political appointees are experienced and well respected, like former President Mondale as you can, but some seem to have been appointed primarily besides their campaign gifts. To give an example, hotel operators named Ambassador Switzerland who gave money. During Clinton's first 14 months in office, 40% of his ambassadorial choices have been political appointees, far higher than the 30% promised by Secretary of State Warren Christopher when he got as Secretary of State. So Clinton is following the pattern everybody had, except it appears during his earlier time he gained 10% more. Well, where did the other be? If 40% are political appointees, where did the other 60% come? 40% essentially are getting their jobs based on the political connections and how much money they give. Where are the other 60% coming from? Coming right up through the foreign service. People that this is the goal. Usually the end goal of people who join the foreign service. I start out as a low-level officer handling problems with visiting Americans in Italy or something, and hopefully after 30 years or something I'll be an ambassador someplace. But probably not to Italy, unless you have political connections and money and so forth. Notice further on down, talking about the Clinton administration, it says its record, however, is better than that of President Bush in his first year, when half of his appointees were political. So they're saying Clinton promised 30%, but it's doing 40%, but that's still better than Bush who did 50%. Now look further on down to give you some ideas on how people try to justify that they have certain kinds of skills when obviously they don't. Athlete turned envoy, towards the bottom of that. Among the political appointees without foreign policy experience is President Clinton's ambassador to the Bahamas. Now, a lot of people like to go to the Bahamas. I don't know much goes on. There's some drug trade and stuff, but usually it's a nice place to hang out. He's a former Washington Redskins linebacker and a Mercedes-Benz salesman who told the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that his football skills helped him develop strategic thinking and negotiating skills that would prove valuable in a diplomatic career. That's where his background is for his job. Jeanette Hyde, ambassador to Barbados, was a prominent Democratic fundraiser in North Carolina, had Clinton's '92 campaign. She had voiced interest in being ambassador to Switzerland or Greece, and was quoted in a newspaper in Raleigh, North Carolina, saying, "That takes a little while." Which man? Oh, that I don't know. Really? Okay, the representative from California. Oh, okay. Oh, good, good. I forgot that. Look at this. Look at this. At the top of this next part, talking about a guy in terms of Ambassador Switzerland. He admitted he had a little foreign politics experience, but defended his part by saying he had traveled to Switzerland about 25 times and had conducted negotiations with winning Swiss business and banking leaders. So if you kind of visit a place a number of times, it seems to fall. Okay, any questions on this or on the process, how it works? All right, and then the last article, I didn't do it. The last one, the selected interest groups and their political activities. Did I give you this one?
No, I don't have that one. I don't have the one that had the little piece on it that you were just talking about either.
Listing the 10. Anybody have that one? I think that one I just gave you the. Okay, I just gave you 2 on the ambassadors rather than 3. Okay, the main thing out of those is essentially the same. The idea in terms of you give money, you get to become ambassadors in that place. This last one, which appears I didn't give to you either, what this did was to list various kinds of interest groups. Now I'll just read it to you. There's a whole list of them here, about 20, and their estimated members and the amount of money that they tend to give. For instance, you get the National Rifle Association, 2.6 million. The National Rifle Association was recently in the news. Why? Anybody know? Well, okay, the thing in Missouri, that's right, the Proposition B would say they wanted to pass, but lost. Anything more recent than that? Where? Yeah, they were scheduled to have a convention right after the massacre out in Littleton, Colorado, the suburb of Denver, and there were all kinds of calls for them to call off their national convention there. Literally, it was right after the massacre, and they said, well, we can't do that. It's going to be a 3-day convention. We'll make it a 1-day convention and kind of try to calm it down. National Rifle Association has a lot of influence. A number of members, a large group, 2.6 million. But look at where the money comes from. This was in 1990. $86 million. They were giving to various kinds of political things. This is why they have influence. $86 million they're giving. The next one after that, in terms of influence, in terms of money, was the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which gave $70 million. And then you have to have some kind of groups that might have a different kind of political look. The National Abortion Actions League, Rights League, for instance, supporting the rights of abortion, gave $9 million. National Right to Life Committee gave $10 million. So they kind of balance one another off. This is how these various kinds of groups, have their influence. You're giving tremendous amounts of money to different candidates. Okay, that's all the new stuff. We had a number of people came in since we did a minute review at 8 o'clock. There were no questions. Yes.
On that article you just talked about with the National Rifle Association, when you say they gave all the millions of dollars to the politicians, we talked before that they couldn't give it to specific politicians. Do they give it to Democrats or Republicans, or do they give it to all different candidates?
No, they can give it. They can give it to specific politicians. The advantage on giving it to political parties is that there's no limit on the amount of money that you can give. But when you could give, if they have a federal limit, for instance, they say $5,000. Okay, they can give $5,000 to a political candidate. Then what it means is that maybe they will find 30 representatives that support their position in Congress. They will give them each $5,000, and then they will have maybe some kind of other friendly political action committee give them $5,000. Set up subsidiary committees. Okay. So it doesn't mean that you can't give the money. It just means there's certain kinds of limitations, and let's find ways around these limitations. You still give money to these limitations. Or they may solicit their individual members, and they will say, look, you can give up to $1,000 to a federal campaign. This is what we'd like to do. We have 1,000 members here, and we're each going to agree to these 20 candidates or supporters. This is where they have their,
Okay, so an individual person can give $1,000, and
To
an
one
organi-
candidate.
to one candidate, and an organization can give up to 5,000?
right, a political action committee, right, right. But see, the way to get around the limit, and this is true for any political action committee, is that you can just form another political action committee.
Well, what do you mean? I thought you meant you were giving it to the candidate, or you giving it to the political action committee, or is that the candidate?
No, you're giving money. Okay, you're giving money to a candidate, and you can give money to political action committees. But the political action committees, when they're attempting to have limitations on the, okay, take that. Okay, my limitation is also $5,000 for a political action committee. What you do here is, let's say Fontan is really concerned about student aid, and the government's cutting back student aid. So they have the Fontan Political Action Committee to give $5,000 to candidates that want to improve student aid. But they want to give more than $5,000. So all they have to do is to say, well, we have the Fontan Administration Political Action Committee. We have the Fontan Students Political Action Committee. We have the Fontan Professors Political Action Committee. We have the Fontan Alumni Political Action Committee. And all of a sudden, they have 5 or 6 committees there will give $30,000. So there are different ways to get around this. The idea with the laws was to limit the influence of special interests, either private individuals or political action committees. But this little brief article I gave you just shows ways that have been found to get around the laws. Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, yeah, for you. Anyone else? Okay, since the class kind of mushroomed, since we had the mini non-review at about 8:02, just reiterate again what is on the test. Remember, the test is Tuesday at 8:30. Short answer questions, 20 or 25 short answer questions. It'll be on the politics stuff I talked about, on the summary I made of who runs Congress, on the articles, on the tapes and films, and on the chapters 11, 12, 13. Now, as I stated earlier in the past, people have had a tendency to not do as well on this third test, even though I think the material is easier than on the first 2 tests, because people seem to believe there will not be questions from the articles, and there will not be questions from the tapes and films, and there are. Okay, anybody in the first row have any questions on anything that we've covered in the third test? Oh, it was just basically, I forget what the official name is, just basically Clinton Bush fundraising. And if I ask a question, if the question is on a film, I'll identify the specific film and essentially, what happened with it. Any other questions? Yeah? No. Any other questions in the first row? Second? Third? Fourth? Fifth? One last thing. We'll go back on this. If anybody wants to get their grades back early, you give me a stamp with a stamped self-addressed envelope. I'll put down what your grade is on the test and what your grade is for the semester. If you want to see the test itself, then you can contact me, leave me a message in my office and set up the time for the test. If you decide to go this route, please put a stamp on the envelope.
On the movies,
Uh-huh.
I can't remember if the Martin Luther King movie was prior to the last test or not. Was that included in this?
No, that was on the.
That was the old.
The second test.
Okay.
That was for the second test in terms of the voting rights. That was on the second test, not on the third test.
So the movies we saw were the candidates. What were the other ones?
Well, you saw the candidate, the one last week in terms of fundraising,
The front line?
and that's it.
The what?
Yeah, this is it. Usually I show 3 this last part, but we had
would you say that the test is, I mean, you said 25 to 30 questions.
No, 20 or 25.
Would you say it's more heavily weighted for the articles? Or the chapters?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that, I would say that the majority of the articles questions, but not all of them, the majority of the articles questions come from the multi-page articles. And that, there are questions on, for instance, there are questions on both films. And there are questions from a number of articles. I don't know if I can say that that's correct. There are questions on the, it covered also three chapters of the book, and summarized U.S. Congress and the local office, but there's questions on all of them. But in terms of specifically in terms of the articles, more of the articles questions, I think it's multi-page articles.
Then when you say questions, are we talking about a specific dates or amounts of money or something? Are we talking concepts?
Similar to the questions in the second part of the second test. You have to have something identified, you have to explain something, what is this, what is that? What is this, do that, that?
The question we had last time on the five-part test and three-part test, that so many people missed.
Right.
I realize that's not going to be on here, but I'm concerned about anything similar. Is there any outside information we should be looking at in terms of that kind of a question?
No,
that wasn't in the book.
Everything is on, that's on the test is stuff that we talked about in class. Back to row one, any questions? 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyone have any questions on anything? All right, now if you miss a test for any reason, same rules. You have to take an oral makeup. Please bring a lot of paper.
I wanted to show you something I got from Gebhardt.
Oh.
You know, our letters that we wrote,
Right,
2 of them?
right.
I just got this the other day. It was pretty substantial.
That word is usually pretty good from what I understand in terms of responding to people.
I just got it. I mean, it was pretty late, but they make an apology for that.
Now, what do you think? You think you signed this?
Oh, no. I'm sure that I was thinking that. You know how.
It looks like he did send you a lot of stuff there.
Do you think he signed it?
No. No, I don't think he saw the letter.
Right.
But still, he
But
got the stuff.
do you think that people that work with them, let me preempt that. At first I thought, you know, the fact that you can really write them and you can make a difference, you know, and we're talking about this in an advocacy class that we have. But then on the other hand, I'm thinking, they never see any of these letters. Are there people, that answer the mail and stuff, are they really that good that they give them that information?
What'll happen is if you wrote a letter dealing with one issue.
Uh-huh.
Now, if they get 5,000 letters all in dealing with this one issue, okay, then, you know, he may be personally contacting some people and stuff and say, well, this is a big major thing. But if your thing is relatively narrow in terms of the amount of letters and stuff you get, he probably doesn't see it at all.
Uh-huh.
Because it just being so much mail.
Yeah.
In fact, I just saw where Gebhardt is going to be in town at a Borders bookstore, I think this week.
Oh, really?
Maybe tonight, signing books. Because he came out with a new book or something. He's going to be at a Borders bookstore. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Well, you can, we had it early, you can talk now if you want.
talking, sit, and just settling them back down again. Didn't hit the child, didn't hurt the child, but you sent a message that calmed and quieted the behavior. Another style of punishment is what they refer to as overcorrection. There's several different ones here, and I'm trying to just give you a sample. Many times when you discipline a child, when you punish a child, you're trying to correct some behavior, right? Some misdeed the child has done, you want to correct that. That's a basic element of most punishment. Well, this is overcorrection. The idea being, in overcorrection, you not only seek to fix the behavior, but you actually attempt to overcorrect it. So what you do is basically, you require more effort. More effort because of misbehavior. If a child spills his or her milk at the dinner table, they've long ago learned that this kind of gets a rise out of mom and dad, and they think that's kind of funny. And so it becomes a game to them. And mom and dad want to correct the behavior of a child potentially spilling his or her milk at the dinner table and so forth. And so mom and dad start requiring the child, next time you spill it, you have to clean it off. And so we give you a paper towel, the dish rags and things like that, and you stop up the milk that's spilled on the table and so forth. That's correction. Overcorrection is saying not only do you clean up the table and the spilled milk, you have to mop the entire kitchen floor when dinner is over. I mean, you stay there, you clean up the entire kitchen so forth because of what you did. That is now overcorrection, where more effort is required because of misbehavior. Again, the child hasn't been hurt at all. They've been inconvenienced. And children don't like the idea of pushing their mouth around and so forth and taking all that extra time when they could be out watching TV or out with their friends or something like that. The message gets sent very quickly, very clearly. Privilege removal is a style of punishment. Most of us know it as a type of grounding. Privilege removal is where you take away the child's opportunity to do something. You take away the opportunity to do something. No car, no TV, no friends, something. Whatever seems to fit a particular offense. There are several other styles of punishment, folks, that I could bring up here, but the point being, as a parent to use punishment effectively, you really need to have a variety of ways of punishing a child. So you can tailor fit the punishment to the child, to the situation, to the offense, in order to use punishment most effectively. It doesn't have to hurt, only be unpleasant. And believe it or not, folks, for punishment to be effective, the child does not have to be afraid of you. Punishment is most effective when it comes from a parent with whom the child has a warm relationship. I've already told you this morning, Dad was a punisher in my family. And I knew if I didn't want to get physically punished, to stay away from Dad. Because when he punished me, it's over, well, that's just Dad doing what Dad does. If Mom ever spanked me, because she so seldom did, that sent a message. This was so out of the ordinary for her to do something. Wow, I must have really done something very bad. And the same thing happens for most children. If they're punished by a parent with whom they have a warm, close relationship, it tends to be a more meaningful type of punishment than from a parent with whom they're more emotionally distant. It's too easy to dismiss that kind of What is that law? It's from Missouri?
It's not in Missouri, they're testing it out in Arkansas or something. It is actually the one where they write the parents for important messages. And then...
Spanking the child.
yeah. Because you can't touch the kid.
We talked about it in a context a few classes ago. We talked about maltreatment, remember? And we're talking about prevention programs. And a lot of prevention programs today have involved some kind of home visitation from professionals, nurses or social workers going into the home to, check on the health of the child and teach appropriate child-rearing skills and so forth, but also because they have eyes and ears. And they might be able to see something or hear something during that home visit that might be a signal, this is a home at risk, this is one to watch. And part of the criticism of that kind of program is, sort of taking away the autonomy of parents for being able to raise their children and sort of turning this over to professionals. I know enough about psychologists that, quite frankly, I don't think I'd want a psychologist raising my, I can't say that, I'm a psychologist. I wouldn't want to turn this over to a committee of psychologists to raise my child, and I shudder to think what that would do.
Well, it started off the problem was made because it started off with kids when they did kind of, when they didn't, they didn't treat it like this used to. They always went to call college youth, and some kids did, and I think that from there, they always had to bring the kids instead of parents saying, I didn't sit in my butt because, I can't smoke or something. You always have to bring the kids over the parents because that's when the laws were getting out of control. But then you were going to get control back to the parents. But they were...
I wish I knew more about the situation. There is a hotline number that exists. Most of you may probably know that there's a number that mental health patients, for example, can call if they feel they're being mistreated in some facility. There is a number that children can call that feel they're being mistreated in school. They can call and report on their parents. This hotline number exists, and you can hear children talking about, I'm going to hotline you, or something like that. They're going to call this number to report. And some of these can be fabrications and so forth. And you end up with a real dangerous situation is that the stigma that gets attached to the person who's falsely accused. The presumption of guilt exists, and you have to prove your innocence rather than we demonstrate your guilt in the case. So we've really got things turned around. It's unfortunate this happened because we're trying to be so cautious in preventing abuse of children that we're erring on the side of casting a very big net and catching some very innocent people in order to make sure we catch all the bad guys. And it's unfortunate. I wish I knew more about it. If you find something in a news magazine article or something on the internet, I'd love to have it. I'll pick up my file.
Well, they have Dateline down here where the kids, well, not Dateline, it said, I admit that, there is I lied. And, they were so into the system that the system was then saying, well, the kids lied, but we think they're lying because they're afraid of the parents. And so, although the kids say, I'm lying, and the parents like, who's lying, they wanted to come back to the parents. And the kids didn't really know what was going to happen to them. They just thought, that he excused some situation, they just go to them.
We're in real dangerous territory on yeah, I can get on the internet and find Dateline. I've bought videos of some Dateline before that I use in other classes. That'd be a nice thing to have. We could really just talk to the debate on this issue. Interesting point. Still a lot like me. Siblings. He really gives God lectures, man. Get me, stop this guy, he's out of control. What? Okay, well, that's checked out. Siblings. We talked about parents. Siblings are another component of the family environment here. Experience. I don't know if you want to call it common sense or as well as research, demonstrates that our sibling relationships are important. Our relationships with our brothers and sisters tend to be among the most long-lasting, intimate, but also intense relationships. Your brothers and sisters will always be your brothers and sisters. That's just the way that works. So it's long-lasting. It's intimate because they see you in the most intimate of occasions. But they're also very emotionally intense relationships. The research has found that it's a sibling relationship that tends to be, at the same time, cooperative and nurturing. But at the same time, it is also competitive and combative. We are as likely to sit and talk and cooperate and play with and get along with our siblings, and the very next second we're arguing and fighting with them as well. That's the nature of sibling relationships. It's that broad of an influence. Factors that influence the sibling relationships: age is a factor. Children who are born closer together in age tend to have the more intense sibling relationship. The idea of being children who are farther apart in age, but their world is just too different for them to really get engaged in it. The ones where you're close together in age, so where there's more likely to be competition. You mean anything from both sides of the spectrum? Yeah. Bad is it? Well, yeah. I think when you hear the sibling, most people tend to have this negative impression of sibling relationships. There are these conflict, strife-filled type of relationships. They can be. Some of the factors that influence that are age. In terms of sex, do you think same-sex or other-sex siblings tend to have more problems? You think both?
No, not the same sex.
Not the same sex. Actually, research suggests same-sex kids.
Or more.
More
combative.
The conflict and problems. Obviously, not your experience.
Not in my experience.
You have a son and a daughter that were.
Well, I'm just saying with my older sister, I'm closer with my sister than with my brother.
Okay.
And not problems with either one, but they're older than I am.
I was going to say, I'm not going to very sure my sisters and I will fight, but we all help our brothers.
Thank you for showing up. We validate the body of research in psychology.
I know my brother and I get along, extremely well. He's one of my best friends, and my friends who have same-sex siblings don't understand that.
I'll speak to them. Same-sex, they find, tends to be the more common outcome, although we know the exceptions to the rules are in class. In terms of sibling conflict and rivalry, contrasting personality types. I thought of that because of what you said, and even what you said. You got kind of a domineering and passive Good sibling rivalry.
I was just going to say, in my family, we're too much alike, and that's the problem. All of my brothers and sisters we're too much alike. And we're pretty spread out in terms of age.
Strong-willed people, for example, would be always butting heads opposed to someone who always gets their way and one is always willing to give in. Which would be the contrast with what the research suggests.
The contrasting gets along better.
Pardon me?
Do the contrasting types get along
No,
better?
contrasting types are the ones that tend to have more conflict.
Oh, I don't hear it.
And then finally, the parenting style. The idea of parents who sort of prepare an older child for the birth of the child, you know, they talk to the child about mommy being pregnant. They feel their younger brother or sister kicking or moving or something like that. They're at the hospital shortly after birth. They talk. You know, the parents go out of their way to sort of help prepare the child for the birth of their siblings. That older sibling tends to do a little better in terms of adjusting to the birth of a baby brother or sister than a child who's been more out of the loop, has been kept out of the, not really informed, not really prepared. And so when the baby's born, they're kind of thrust into a home environment. Well, now everything is shared because there's two instead there's just, it used to be just me. A child is more aware of the second one on the way to do a better job preparing for that.
Would that be the only child we're talking about, or could that be,
Any child, really, especially to that point, the only child. Didn't say it was over a second, but really any child should be informed and prepared for the birth of a baby. I'm both going to be more of the nurturing and awful life. In terms of peer relations, we'll talk about play. At the very beginning of the hour, and then we'll rush scurry into the biological development